Hello, it's Stefan here from HeyUGuys, and I have seen Suicide Squad today, and I'm going to be sharing my thoughts with you today here on video. Of course, the film so far has been getting slightly mixed reviews. The majority have been quite negative. Obviously, there's now being shared on social media is this petition to take Rotten Tomatoes down, which has been quite funny. Regrettably, I am joining the chorus of those somewhat underwhelmed by this particular endeavour. I was really excited, obviously, I think as everyone was when this was first announced it was going to be made, particularly when they announced that David Ayer was going to be on board, because End of Watch was a terrific film, and I thought Fury was a really great war movie, and if he could bring that kind of into this kind of production, I thought it could have been a really quite special piece of cinema. Unfortunately, with this film, it's an ensemble piece, which is always quite a challenge for filmmakers to try and kind of overcome, when you've got to try and invest equal amounts of time in a whole kind of variety of characters. It's particularly difficult in this instance when these are characters we don't really know. Many cinematic kind of debuts for a lot of these roles, obviously Joker aside, we're seeing a lot of these characters for the very first time. So not only are we kind of having to invest emotionally in their stories, but also we're meeting them as well for the first time. So it's quite difficult to kind of get to know them, and by the end of the film invest in them when there's so many of them. I think this film really would have benefited had we just cut down the Suicide Squad somewhat and just had slightly less characters to focus on, because not only have you got the kind of 6 core members of the Suicide Squad, but so many other characters kind of are surrounding that as well that have got very pivotal roles, and it just doesn't quite balance it for me. But I did admire the tone in this movie. I felt that in Batman v Superman, I think that Zack Snyder was rightly kind of criticised for his quite dour approach to the film. It was a bit too serious in parts, and I think particularly at the moment when you've got Marvel making movies like Deadpool, which is really deconstructing the whole genre, and then films like Ant-Man, which at its core is a real comedy. And I think that we're seeking something quite different now in the superhero genre, a bit far away and a bit far removed from the kind of Chris Nolan trilogy of Batman films, which was terrific and had a real place in the kind of timeline of superhero movies. But I do feel like we have progressed somewhat, and we're kind of looking for more escapism, perhaps a sort of more pure form of entertainment. And I do think that Suicide Squad and David Ayer were really trying to do that in this instance, but it was quite contrived in its execution, and actually, even though they were kind of vying to be a bit more playful, a bit more irreverent, it actually backfired because it didn't feel quite natural enough. On a more positive note, I really loved the look of the film. I thought the visual aesthetic was incredible. It was so unforgettable. I thought the kind of neon glow that existed and the colours used were really terrific, and the way that music was implemented, and not just the way it was implemented, but the song selection. There's some great songs in this, kind of following on from Guardians of the Galaxy in that regard, to have some really great belters. So I really enjoyed those aspects of it. But I did think that, ironically as well, for a film that is all about villains, this film was lacking a really good villain. We didn't really have a truly kind of formidable opponent that where the stakes were high enough for us to really kind of feel like they're never going to overcome this antagonist. It always felt like the kind of the power was in the hands of the heroes, or the anti-heroes in this instance, and I felt that was quite detrimental as well to the film. In regards to the performances and the characters, I thought that Will Smith was the standout performer as Deadshot. He brought a sort of certain kind of subtlety to the role in a film that definitely isn't thriving or trying to thrive on the notion of subtlety, and I think that was quite a nice addition, and certain scenes between him and his daughter actually were quite some of the more engaging of the whole film. Margot Robbie is terrific as Harley Quinn. I thought the role itself was handed quite a few kind of dud lines. There was a few one-liners that didn't quite work, but as a performance, she had the energy that really kind of there's kind of certain infectious enthusiasm to her performance, which was terrific. And I think that's probably the most enticing standalone feature would be a Harley Quinn film. However, there were characters that were kind of compromised, and when we were talking before about this having so many characters try and study, there were some, I mean, like Killer Croc or kind of Boomerang, where they just weren't really utilised to their full potential. We didn't really get to see Courtney. You know, and I was so excited in the kind of promotion to this film. I thought he was going to be someone that's really going to steal the show, and he just kind of got sort of unfairly ignored in many regards. He wasn't really focused on enough, which was a shame. And then there's the Joker. Obviously, the Joker is one of the big talking points of this movie. Jared Leto taking on a role that Jack Nicholson and Heath Ledger had perfected in very different ways, and I just don't think he got it right. I felt it was a little bit too self-conscious. I think the Joker has this vacancy behind his eyes. He's so callous that he has no limits. He doesn't feel empathy, and that's what's terrifying about the Joker, is he will do anything and he doesn't feel any sort of sense of remorse. And I didn't get that from Jared Leto today. I didn't really see that kind of coldness, that unpredictable, kind of quite unhinged nature to the character. I felt it was a little bit pantomime, a little bit forced, and I think sadly he was one of the weak points in this film. But it's not a bad piece of filmmaking. I just felt that the story got a bit complex and a bit convoluted, and the last act was a little bit messy. It reminded me in that regard of Fantastic Four, in that it just felt almost like a separate film to what had come before, and which is a shame, because the opening act and the whole kind of first half of the film was really terrific. I mean, I was so engaged, and the way each character was introduced with their kind of title cards and the whole approach, it felt like this could be quite a special piece of cinema. And as we progressed throughout the story, it just grew quite tedious in part. And it's a real shame, because I'm a big fan of DC and I was really excited about where they would take this film. But I don't think it's a lost cause yet. I think there's a few characters in here I would like to see explored further. I'm definitely looking forward to Justice League still. I just hope that they just manage to be a bit more playful in their approach without feeling like they're trying too hard to impress. And I just really hope as well that we just give more focus on certain characters, have a couple of lead roles. Don't try and share the load between so many. I mean, obviously the Avengers thrived in that particular notion, but we knew those characters already. You know, we'd had so many spin-off movies and other kind of separate franchises. We already had an invested interest in all of them. In this film, perhaps too much was required of us in that regard, but going into future projects, now we have met them, and a few of them we quite like. Hopefully we can expand on them, and I don't think it is a lost cause yet, but this film regrettably is sadly the second kind of misfire for DC this year, and it's a shame, because obviously Marvel can barely put a foot wrong, and it's a shame that at the moment the one great kind of competitor are not quite up to scratch, but they've got lots of projects in the pipeline. I'm looking forward to The Flash, Ezra Miller as the lead character, which I think is going to be really exciting. So there's still a lot to look forward to, but regrettably, Suicide Squad, it's getting quite negative reviews, and unfortunately, there is a very good reason for that. Please check out the full written review on HeyUGuys.com, which is up now, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel, which will come along somewhere there if my editor edits it in. But yeah, thanks anyway, and we'll see you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey!